Ace, are you ready to do this?
Yes, Eric, I certainly am. Let's do it.
3, 2, 1, go! I'm Eric, Idiot Runner Kosek.
And I'm Grace Hot Pants Langheim. Eric is all business in the front of the pack, and I am all about the party in the back.
That's right, business up front and party in the back. Together, we are the Running Mullet.
And we are going to talk about every aspect of running, the podium to the DNF and everything in between.
If you are a runner, this show is for you. Now sit back, get out your foam roller, and enjoy the party. Great.
Yes.
That intro is not going to get old anytime soon.
No. Just for fun fact, we while that's playing, we headbang the entire time, and it's super fun.
Yeah, and I get to watch you do it like in the background, and you're probably doing the same with me.
Yes, accurate.
We are dorks.
Accurate, yes. So
hey,
speaking of dorks, hi Chad.
Chad Brown's here. I gotta turn these comments on. I always forget.
Yeah. Chad's in the comments, and anybody else who wants to join Chad in the comments section. I don't know if that's going to motivate people. We'll see. It's a party whenever Chad Brown's around. Well, go join him. Go talk to him. He's lonely over there right now. Join into the chat if you are live with us, and if you're not live, then good morning, good afternoon. Hope you're having a good run.
Hey Grace, what hat you got on tonight?
Oh, I have my Trail Sisters hat on today. I'm repping the Trail Sisters crew.
Nice. I like the color. You don't see that like yellowish color much.
It's mellow. What do you have? I can't tell.
Black Forest. Still got the sticker.
Black Forest. Ah, BFU.
Yeah. It's one of my faves.
It's on my list.
How are you?
I'm good. Came off of a good weekend of volunteering and running. How about you? What'd you do this weekend?
I think I worked my butt off Friday and Saturday at the house doing stuff, a whole lot of work. I finally have a bathroom in my basement, which is phenomenal. I mean, it doesn't sound like much to most people, but wow, like I just made Becky's whole year. Yeah. So it's just a toilet. I mean, there's no sink or anything, but there's a toilet down there that works.
Sanitizer. Just put some sanitizer there.
Yeah,
you're fine.
Exactly. So that was like we're living large now. And then I worked my butt off Saturday, didn't even get a run in, which is okay. And then Sunday I did some stuff up on the hill, kind of trail stuff / Boston stuff, I guess, a little mixy doodle.
I like mixy doodles.
Yes. But back to, I guess you helped out at an aid station, correct?
Yes. I went to Rattling Creek Run over the weekend. Really fun race. Saw super awesome people who came out, even though they saw the weather forecast, and good on them. I had a canopy, thankfully, but my friend Barb, aka Miss America, we went. We did registration first, and then we were aid station number 1. And then the timing was perfect. So we shifted our aid station. So we were also aid station 3, which was really cool because we were at registration and aid station 1 and aid station 3. And then we went to the finish line to hang out, which we were everywhere. It was kind of fun.
That sounds like a phenomenal day to really get yourself in the whole race without doing it and seeing all the parts of it and not having to worry about the stress of running / racing.
Yeah, it was a really fun day. Did not run at all that day because I had plenty of running around at the aid station and kind of filled my cup of hanging out with traily people, but also giving my legs a break. And I thought it was a good topic for today to talk about aid stations. And I love working aid stations because I take this job very seriously. We are there to get people in, get people out, make sure they have all the things that they need and that they're having a good time. And, I don't get a chance to talk to, because this is the point, I don't get a chance to talk to a lot of people from the front of the pack about aid stations because I want to let's get them in and out, you know? So I wanted to hear from you, your thoughts on, as a front of pack runner, how do you view aid stations? How do you get through them quickly? Or do you hang out? I think you get through them pretty quickly, but how do you manage aid stations?
You know, this is such a we had said we were going to talk about this a little bit, and I was excited because it's such a fun conversation and it fits our whole idea for this show perfectly. And I think those watching and those that will watch will agree that upfront can be kind of intense sometimes. That doesn't mean it's not fun, but it's intense. It's kind of business-like. And I've been around an aid station just helping out and near the back of the Mullet, and it is not intense at all. It is a phenomenal party, which makes me want to join the back of the Mullet even more. So yes, to answer your question, so depending on the distance of the race, whether it's a short distance or long distance, if I can manage to not use the aid stations, I'm going to carry everything I need. If that means myself carrying more than I'd like to, so be it. But if I can save 1 second at that aid by not stopping at that aid station, that's my thoughts. Now, I tell all my athletes, not all of them, but lots of them, aid stations are just time suckers. That's all they are.
Yeah.
But they're so fun. So a time sucker is a bad word.
When you say shorter race, like, talk to me about how you make that decision of whether or not you're going to bring everything with you. And you don't often run with a pack, right? So you're talking about like a waist. You can carry everything on your waist or in your hands, right?
Yeah, I mean, I strategically, I wear shorts that have the the spandex type pockets. So if I need to go with just gel type fuel, I can, or even real food, something that's not going to bounce around in there. You know, I got the what are they, rabbit shorts that have the spandex pocket all the way around the waist.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever tried them, but you can fit so much food around your waist and it doesn't bounce. They're my favorite thing in the whole world. They're like way overpriced, but hey, it's quality. So anyway, you know, stuff like that. Yes, I like a belt because there's a big pocket on it if I need to carry more. And I like a handheld water bottle that straps to my hand where I don't have to hold on to it. I mean, that's just
do you do one or do you do two? Because I've seen both.
I don't think I've ever done two, and I don't know. I just don't like the idea. But yeah, a lot of the fast people have two so they don't have to wear a vest.
Okay.
But to answer your question, where do I make that decision? One, can I get water from streams if I need it? You know, if I'm not very picky, I probably should filter more than I do, but I know a good spring when I see one. I live up here where there's a lot of them.
Good looking spring. Do you talk to it first?
Oh yeah.
You just know a good looking spring. You're like, that is a good looking spring.
that's one fine looking spring. So but I mean, if I can get water, if I need water and I know that's out there, well, that's one less reason I have to use aid station. Two is the obvious one is the distance between aid stations, right? If I can stop at one and not the other type thing, or skip one, I'm going to do that. But basically it's how far can I take this? I kind of train. I do a lot of training at a deficit, I guess I would say, calorie deficit. A lot of times I'll fuel on training runs, but I'll make it a point to, so my body knows how to perform on less calories rather than a ton. So if I get the chance during a race to get more than I'm used to, all the better.
Pick up some berries along the way.
Yeah, or stop at an aid station if I feel like I want to. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, I mean, the idea for me is can I make it without stopping at the time suckers?
Okay. Which requires tool belt shorts, one handheld, not two. That's just crazy. Hot looking spring water.
Yeah, very hot.
Very hot looking spring water. And you'll be starving when you finish. Got it.
Not really. I mean, you got to make sure you have enough calories. And, and for me, I'm not a heavy sweater. PJ's telling me that, he can't do handhelds because it's just not enough. I
Yeah,
get that. I see what other
same.
people, how other people sweat. And it's like,
Yeah.
holy moly, I'm glad I don't have that problem. So I can go on more minimalistic hydration, I feel
Mhm.
like, than some people, especially in these colder months.
Yeah.
Summer's a different story.
Yeah.
But all this is a big but, because I still am stopping at aid stations, but if I can do any of these things or all of these things, it cuts down on my time that I have to be there.
Right. That is definitely a big butt.
Yeah.
Speaking of big butts, let's talk about the caboose, the back of the pack.
Yeah. How do you handle an aid station, and what do you do if you're in a race where you want to do the best you can, I guess?
Okay. Okay. And I'm glad you clarified that because there's different types of races.
Absolutely.
There's super fun race that I'm doing because I just want to enjoy myself. There might be a race that I'm doing with a friend and I'm helping them to finish. And then there's a race that I want to do well at. And when I want to do well at a race, I do make sure that I have an aid station chart ahead of time. And I'll usually have, I do a little piece of paper and I write down my aid stations, my predicted times, cumulative time, and the distance between aid stations. And I put packing tape on each side of it. So it's like laminated
I've
without
done
being
that.
laminated.
Been
Yeah,
there.
it's my cheap lamination, and then you just cut around the edges, and that seals it in pretty good. And if you sweat a lot, then you can still look at your little chart. So I get an aid station chart, and I will usually stop at every aid station. Yes, I don't always fill my water at every aid station. So one of the things that I do to help save time is I have a full bladder on my back, and then my front is usually an electrolyte drink. And I find it easier to clean my bladder. If some people put electrolyte in their bladder, I choose not to. I find it easier to clean it, and I am also not a heavy sweater, so I don't have a lot of salt in my sweat. I don't need a ton of electrolyte. I can manage off of my front bottles, and it depends on the race. I might never fill my back bladder. I just go with what I have, and I'll only fill the front at aid stations because it's easier to fill the front than to fill the back.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm careful with how I'm going to fill my water and not fill it at every aid station. Plus, it just weighs you down. So if I can get to the finish line with a completely empty bladder and empty front pockets, then I know I've done a good job, one, of hydrating, and two, of not making it harder on myself when I don't need to, and not stopping too much. The next thing that I do is when I'm coming into an aid station, if I'm about half a mile away, I start doing a self check. I'll start with my head. Is my head good? Do I need to change anything with my head? How do my shoulders feel? How do my arms feel? Do I have any chafing on my back? Do I have any chafing on my legs? How do my feet feel? Do I need to adjust my shoelaces? And I go from head to toe and I just think through everything. Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? And I get a list in my head of, okay, I have a hot spot at this one place on my back. My shoe needs to be tied, and I need some real food. 1, 2, 3. I know I have 3 things. I get into the aid station. I manage 1, 2. And the last thing that I always do, and this drives me nuts when I see people, it doesn't drive me nuts, but I just think, oh, what a lost opportunity. When I see crew, when their runner comes in, the first thing they do is say, what do you want to eat? And that should actually be the last thing you do with your runner, is say, what do you want to eat? Because you send them with it. So what I see people do is eating at the aid station. And really, I want to grab, boom, boom, boom. What are my 3 things that I want? By the way, with the last idiot run that I was at, I had to quickly grab something, and then I was going to shoot out the door because there were other cool people. Because all the people at the idiot runs are cool. So I was running out the door and I grabbed a pierogi. No, it was a quesadilla, and then a piece of, it was a Spam quesadilla and a pierogi, and then something else. There were 3 things that I shoved together and I made a little sandwich out of it. And it was amazing. So any real food, I'm grabbing the food from the aid station and I'm walking with it as I leave the aid station. Right. So I should really, the only thing I should be doing at aid station is something that I can't do out on the course, or it's much faster for me to do it at the aid station. Now, if I have a rock in my foot and I'm still 8 miles from an aid station, I'm not going to wait for the aid station. Stop, get the rock out that could potentially cause me an issue later on if it's in a really bad spot. That way I'm in and out at the aid station. So it's really just stuff that I can't do out on the trail. I agree, they are time suckers. And if it is a fun race, that is exactly what I want to do, is have some fun. So there's plenty of other races where I hang out at the aid stations just for funsies. But that's how I manage aid stations, being at the back of the pack. And it adds up. So when I'm race planning, if I'm doing 100K, let's say any race that has 5 aid stations, you got 5 aid stations. If you're spending 5 minutes at 5 aid stations, it's 25 minutes.
It doesn't take long, correct?
It doesn't take long. If you spend 2 minutes at 5 aid stations, it's 10 minutes. That difference of 15 minutes, when you see people come in right after the cutoff of a race, that's your time right there. You did it.
I know. I see it every single, especially ultra longer type run. These 50K to 50 mile or 100 mile races, those little chunks add up to such huge time. It's insane.
Yeah.
Before we go any farther, I want to veer off real quick because PJ Simotis is asked, is it possible to overdo it on electrolyte mix versus plain water? And the first thing that popped into my head for me was Eastern States this past year. I kind of made a big boo-boo, and I went into Eastern States basically hydrating on straight tailwind, figuring I would get my hydration and my electrolytes all in one, and calories. But this idiot didn't really practice that and get his body used to that much sodium. And this is coming from other people's opinions. But what I think what I did is I overloaded on sodium. So at mile, I'm going to say mile 40 to 50, my stomach turned inside out and everything came out. And I felt like garbage for the next 20 some miles. And I'm pretty sure that was the culprit. I could be wrong. Might just be I was ate too much food or whatever, but I'm pretty sure my sodium intake went too high from overdoing it on the electrolyte mix of Tailwind. I'm still a Tailwind fan, but I should have prepped my body more for what I was doing.
Yeah, spot on. It is definitely possible to overdo it on electrolyte mix. It is such an individualized thing. And there are some great resources online to try to figure out what works for you. I'll have to dig out this spreadsheet that I had before. It helps you track what your sweat rate is, depending on what you track, what time of day it is, what temperature it is. You track all that stuff and you can calculate your sweat mix. Now, there's 2 things to consider. One is what is your sweat rate, and then the other one is what is the sodium content of your sweat. So 2 people who sweat the same amount might not have the same sodium content in their sweat. And that's where you start losing electrolytes through sweat. And, Eric, I did something very similar when I did the Duck 100K. It's 2 50Ks put together.
Yep.
And so the second 50K, my genius says, you know what? The aid stations are so close together on this. It's very runnable. I'm just going to do bottles, and I'm going to go heavy on Element, which also has magnesium in it. And this is something to look at with your electrolyte mix is, does it have magnesium or not? Some do, some don't. Magnesium is, it makes you go. So it's milk of magnesia. That's what it comes from, is magnesium. So I had 2 bottles up front. I was like, I'll go heavy on them and then I'll just dilute it throughout the race. Well, first aid station I blew through, second aid station ran out of water. And I had nothing to drink except for this really heavy electrolyte mix. It was probably mile 55 or something like that. And every like 5 steps, I was going over into the woods until there was nothing left in my body. And that was such a bigger time suck than if I would have just worn a full pack and took plain water with me. So yeah, you can definitely overdo it on electrolyte. And I like that point out. And then Becky Kosek also said swapping bottles really helps. And I think this is another thing about thinking about your training differently than your race. You know, how you carry bottles in training might be very different than how you carry bottles in a race. And what does your crew need to support you? And they might need 2 sets of bottles, and they can get you in and out a whole lot faster. So that was a good point out to also get in and out of aid stations a lot faster.
Yeah, and some time, like especially for the longer ultras, I like to put a nipple on the end of my bottle because I turn into a big baby.
Yes.
So it just helps, you know. No, but back to the aid stations, you know, thinking about it as you're talking and things, and maybe somebody that's watching on here could confirm this, but I feel like a lot of times when I come into the aid station, I'm saying 2 things. I'm saying, I'm sorry, and thanks for your help. I'm sorry, and I appreciate you. Because for one, I come in, and for me, it's pure panic because I don't want to waste any. I don't want to get time sucked into this. And I also know what it takes to volunteer at an aid station and be there for hours and volunteer and do this because, and when you have stuff you could be doing at home. So I promise you, I always try to thank everybody that's there, especially the people that are personally trying to fill my bottle up or this and that. Even if I'm stumbling and dropping it on the ground and getting frustrated, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm a jerk, but I appreciate you so much, you know? And that's
you get a shirt that just says, I'm sorry and thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry and thank you. And
I'm sorry, big baby. Thank you for volunteering.
Yep. So that's probably a lot different than the back of the pack. Probably a little less laid back and chill. I don't know. Maybe I just need to learn to breathe a little bit.
Yeah, like I said, it depends on what the purpose of the race is. I have certainly gone through some races where every aid station was a literal photo shoot, like whole photo shoot. I did Funt every time I do Funt because they have awesome aid stations. Like, you have to plan that into your schedule, is photo shoot at every aid station. You know, it depends on the race and what the purpose is and where you are with cutoffs and all of that. And there's great people at aid stations. And I think the really great volunteer, you know, that's something else that we can touch on real quick, is just the as a volunteer, what are some really good tips? And you have, you're going to be doing Eastern State Slate Run, aid station captain. So what are those tips that you have for people who volunteer at aid stations, which first off, I highly recommend doing at some point because you can learn a lot.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to speak like I'm a professional at volunteering at aid stations either, because there's people that do it and again put their time out there a lot more than I do. I always if I'm doing an aid station and Slate Run's an example, I want to make sure I have more than enough help that, you know, if every runner has 3 people hovering over them, then so be it, without chaos, obviously. But you know, that I think that's the most important thing, is everybody has a job, sticks to the job, and don't try to do something that you weren't supposed to do. You know what I mean? If you're in charge of keeping the chairs open, then don't try to fill up somebody's water bottle that's already being filled. You know, I probably talk about it with your crew, your group of helpers beforehand. Yeah. You probably have more input on this whole thing than me. I mean,
why do I never not have input? Did I say that right? I have no idea.
You just did it this week.
The double negative.
What stood out this weekend that worked really well or didn't work? Anything, or what?
Yeah, absolutely. So our aid station was positioned perfectly because they were coming at us and they could see and hear us. One thing that I try to do as an aid station, I do like to play music, but I'd like to make sure that it's not too loud. If it's too loud, then people can't hear when people are asking, like, can you give me this and can you give me that? Do you have salt tabs? So one of the things I did as they were coming in, especially for my front of the pack, I would yell out some of the options that we have at the aid station. I only had 3 options for liquids. I had water, Coke, and pickle juice. So I would say, hey, we have water, Coke, and pickle juice. And I would yell that at them as they're coming in. And then if I saw them grabbing, they're reaching for their front bottle and they're starting to unscrew the cap, I would go, as the aid station volunteer, I go to them, grab their bottle from them. I run to the aid station, fill it up while they do other things so they can get their food and whatever they want. And I'm dealing with their water bottle. So I don't wait until they come to me to then help them. I'm going to go to them and grab their stuff from them and I'll put their bottle into their vest for them. I get a little grab handsy and then, and I get them in and out. Now for my front of the pack, and that's mostly for front of the pack, for the most part, they only need either water or an electrolyte mix, or they need like a quick shot of pickle juice or Coke, something like that. And then I get them on their way. And then other people, I'll shout out a couple of options, because as a runner, you see the table and your head is just not thinking straight. So I'll say things like, we have Pringles, we have peanut butter and jelly. And I say the things because somehow it registers when people say it rather than when you're looking at it. And I'll say the words, we have Fig Newtons. And then one person will be like, oh yes, I love Fig Newtons, give me those. So I think as a volunteer, you ask yes or no questions, things that people can say yes or no to. You might say, do you want salty or sweet? They say, I want salty. Okay, well, here's your options for salty. And then if they have garbage, my hand is already out there and like all the garbage goes in my hand. I will throw it away for you, So give me your garbage, you take food, off and on your way. And then middle and back of the pack for longer races, when I can tell that we might get like a crew. There's 6 people who all came in, they're wearing matching shirts and everything. And if I'm at an aid station where it's totally okay to do so, we have approval from the race director. Some of them even provide alcohol at aid stations. I have a crew come in, all got matching shirts, they're having a good time, they're taking pictures. I'm like, who wants shots? And I'll line everything up for them. I'm like, I'm doing one with you. And we all like have a good time. Let me take a picture. And then I take a picture for them and try to get them all pumped up for the day. So when I see a crew coming in, especially, or if I see somebody by themselves toward the back of the pack, like I'm going to stop and 100% of my attention is on that person. And I'm like, what can I get for you? You're doing awesome. Let's do this. So I really try to pump them up too.
Yeah. And I think one thing I want to add is like towards the front of the pack, at least for myself, I find a lot of times when I'm racing, I'm by myself a lot. So when I come into an aid station, it's kind of an overload of people that want ready to help. It's going from this state of mind of, okay, I think I'm in the mood for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, some Pringles, and fill my bottles up and I'm gone. Then I come into the aid station and everybody's helping me and all that goes out the window. I leave the aid station halfway up the hill and realize I didn't get my Pringles, I didn't get my sandwich, and I got my water bottles filled. You know what I mean? So it's, I guess for you to saying you state what you have there and stuff, that's probably a good thing, because it's kind of like zombie-like when you go from haven't seen anybody for an hour or 2 hours to all of a sudden there's people all around me talking, and I'm in a rush and I'm panicking and I appreciate them, but like, what do? I don't know, Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's another good point is when you have one runner coming up, like have one person take care of them and not like 3 people taking care of them. Right. It can be really overwhelming for the runners. You make them feel special, but also give them their space. Some people come in, they know exactly what they need and they're off. And then I try to give them some encouraging words on the way out. You know, you're looking strong, have fun. I always try to say something like have fun, because that's really what it's about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the last thing I'll add on aid stations, then we got to try to move on. It's when you happen to be the first place runner in any race. One of the most frustrating things for myself is I don't know how far back second is. Second can always ask the aid stations, hey, how far ahead is he? Oh, he just left 2 minutes ago. Oh, he's half hour ahead. You don't have a chance. Then they know, right? I can't ask because they don't know. So that makes my panic even worse if I happen to be lucky enough to be in front. All right. But the one time that this stands out to me was Black Forest. I came in the Slate Run aid station, which was 50K into the 100K course. And I was kind of in a panic. I was feeling good. So I wanted to get all my stuff and get out. And Julia was there, Julia Martin. I don't think she's listening, but hopefully she listens to this show. But she hooked me up. She filled my bottles up fast, and she actually knew from a previous aid station about how far back the guy was. The answer she gave me was like, I was feeling good. And so I was like, I got to rip. I got to go. There's a long climb after that aid station. But anyway, I went, so I grabbed my stuff and just left and started running down the trail. And I thought, and I stopped in my tracks and I ran back to her. I said, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Because I forgot that part of it, you know, but she was amazing. They were there freezing their butts off down at Slate Run. And just like we're talking about, I mean, without these aid stations, none of these races would even happen, let alone be as awesome as they are. So thank you to everybody who has run, will run an aid station.
Yeah, I think that's one of the cool parts about running an aid station is that you get a lot of very appreciative people, and some people might forget to say thank you, and that's okay too. I know I've forgotten before. I try not to, but that's a really cool part of it. Now, that made me think of another thing that is really great to know, that sometimes race directors forget to tell you. If you are running an aid station, how many miles is it to the next aid station or to the finish? Because a lot of people will ask, even if, and you don't want to trust another runner. You want to trust the race director or one of the other, ideally it's the race director who tells you. So, that's a good piece of information to try to get out of them before you head to the aid station is how far is it to the next one? Because so many people ask that question.
Yeah. This is a fun conversation. I think we could probably have it for quite a while. And I'd love to hear other people's views and what they think and stuff like that. But we're already over on our time.
Here we are.
So let's transition over to the next part of these races and running. And something you hit on last episode and wanted to talk about a little bit is actual race prep.
Yes. And it might be something that we start talking about. We might have to continue on. But race prep is something that I just love doing. And, you know, there are some people who hate what I mean by race prep is putting together a strategy. Like, this is going to be, I'm mission impossible about it. I've got maps, I've got timers, I have all the things to try to predict as much as possible what's going to happen. How am I going to manage through everything? It's something that I do for my athletes to get ready, not for every race, but primarily for key races. We put together a race strategy, and I've done for a couple of friends off to the side. So I thought that would be a fun conversation, is how to put together a great race strategy. Like I said, training very different than race day, and it requires a different strategy. So where to start? Now, I want to preface this with, plenty of people hate race strategy, and planning too much will stress them out. And so that's a whole different perspective is, putting all together a great plan can make some people feel more comfortable on race day, can also stress out some people on race day. Eric, where do you sit on that spectrum? How much you plan and why?
I personally don't plan much on race day as far as writing things out, how things are going to go, what kind of pace I'm looking for. And I think that follows into my coaching. I don't do that much race planning for athletes unless they specifically want to get into more laying out how they want this race to go and numbers they want to hit. The way, we talked about it a little bit, the way I look at it is that the training does lead up to race day. And, hopefully everything came together where you should be running by feel for the most part. And where you're at should be whatever effort you're giving should be 100% at any one time. If things aren't going great through the race, well, then you can turn it down a little bit, and that's okay. That's why we have different goals for races. But that's why I wanted you to talk about it, is because you definitely get into more detailed planning for athletes than I do, and that's okay. I like it. I'd like to see it sometime.
Yeah. So I do heavy race planning, not so much because there's a pace I want to hit, but there's a pace that I have to hit in order to hit cutoffs.
Right.
And so sometimes it is because, I was just working with one of my athletes, Kaya. She wanted to hit a half marathon PR, and we did train for that. But it was a flat course. And sometimes on a flat course, going too hard in the beginning, you end up gassing out later on. So we really wanted to put together a great plan for that. Another one is I helped one of my athletes get to a 100-miler on the Yeti 100 course. And the Yeti 100 course, it's a rail trail, it's flat. And, she probably could have run the first 50 miles without even walking. But if you do that, the second 50 are really going to hurt. And so we put together a whole walk-run strategy because she didn't have the benefit of walking up the hills and running down running the flats and the downs. There was no space in that course for walking. And it was her first 100. So we had to put together a walk-run strategy for that course. So it helps not just, I think, with whether or not you're going to hit cutoffs, but also just to pace yourself and make sure that you're going to have a good race. So
that's interesting. Here, answer me this, Grace. Do you think, in your opinion, that race strategy becomes more scientific the farther you get back in the mullet? Not scientific per se, but more important for those as you go from front to back.
Mm-hmm. You know what I think? I don't think it's a front to back thing. Well, I think it can be a front to back thing. I think people in the back of the pack will really benefit from putting together a good strategy, and you're more likely to hit a finish if you put together a plan. And I have a lot of different pieces of that plan. It's not just about pacing. And I think that, but to some extent, I think a lot of it's about experience. I think that the more time you spend in a particular distance, the less you have to do those types of things. But even somebody like, John Kelly, he's got spreadsheets upon spreadsheets upon spreadsheets, just because that's how his brain works.
Right.
So some runners, and it doesn't matter where they are in the front or the back. It depends on that particular race, how experienced you are at doing that course, I think. And then I think that back of the packers will benefit if they're at danger of not hitting cuts. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
All right. So dive in.
Okay, let's do it. Again, this might need a part 2, but just to get started, there are several pieces of strategy. One is a pacing strategy. There's also a clothing strategy. What are you going to wear on race day? Did you practice with it? Another one is a nutrition strategy, making sure not just what are you going to eat during the race, but what are you going to eat before the race? And here's a good example. I had an athlete who was doing a marathon. Well, the marathon didn't start till 9 a.m. Well, they usually get up at 4 a.m. So they would get up at 4 a.m., have breakfast. Race doesn't start until 9 a.m. and they weren't eating until 2 hours into the race. So they were going from like 5 a.m. to 11 a.m. with no food, 6 hours, and then bonking in the middle of a marathon. And that's because the pre-race food strategy wasn't on point. So now when they do a marathon, we do 2 breakfasts. We do the wake up breakfast, and then we do a pre-run breakfast. And then that we base it off of the marathon start time. And then we know that they're going to be good to go and not going to bonk during a marathon. And then just BQ'd last October. So that was a piece of the strategy that got them from not BQing over to BQing. A couple other pieces too, but nutrition strategy. And then also, what are you going to eat post race?
Yeah, and when the races start, even if it's not a marathon, it's funny because 95% of races, let's face it, they start early morning to 8 o'clock. But there's a few that for some, one reason or another, they start at like lunchtime or something like that.
Right.
And I was always like, wait a minute, I'm super prepared. I've trained for this race, but I don't even know how to freaking eat in the morning to get to where I want to be at when it's normal time. So it's like, do I have lunch? Do I not have lunch? It kind of stinks. And then we get into the whole pooing all over the place thing if you don't do it right,
all over the walls.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Anyway, continue on.
Yeah. So ideally we do that practice, a couple months, we start figuring out nutrition strategy at least 2 months ahead of time. But ideally, 4 or 5 months ahead of that key race, we're starting to work on nutrition strategy, especially for those people who struggle with eating during a race. You can look at, if you're one of those people who can't eat really well during a race, you can look at it 2 ways. You can either train your body you can keep going for longer and longer and longer distances if that's your goal, and force your body to go longer and longer and longer without food, or you can work on training your gut. And which one is going to be more likely to bring your success is probably training your gut. It takes a while to do it, and everybody's different, but I encourage people, even if they've tried eating and they didn't have a lot of success before, to just keep trying different things until you get there. So, and then there's the last piece of this is a crew and a pacing strategy. So even for those people who struggle with putting together, they're like, I just want to run by feel. It's like, great, I understand you want to run by feel. How's your crew supposed to crew you for that? So, you got to make sure that you're putting something together for your crew, your pacers, so they know what to expect. They know. Now, I will say that as crew, I think that ideally every crew should go straight from one aid station right to the next one and not stop anywhere in between. That being said, it is good to know about what time are you going to head into that aid station. So putting together that crew and pacing strategy. And then the last piece is a motivation strategy. So in other words, trying to get the athlete ready for what are you going to do when everything goes to hell? Like the difference between finishing and not finishing could be, how do you manage the unknown? When something terrible happens, how are you going to keep your head straight? Is it going to be a mantra? Is it going to be, I kick your ass? Like what is that thing that's going to get you over the hump when things get really, really hard? And so I think thinking about that ahead of time and preparing for it can be really helpful when you're in a tough race.
Yeah. And for me, that's my wife and my kids. Like when I become miserable, that's what gets me over the hump, is getting to the aid station and then them saying, well, you can't quit, keep going, quit being a baby.
Yeah. And telling your crew, like, 1, 2, 3, here's the reasons why it's okay for me to quit this race.
Oh, this is good.
Anything other than that, it's not okay.
This is good, because I slate run at Eastern States. I came in, I was trying to just listen to me, people. Like, this is why I feel like death and things aren't really good right now at all. And they didn't care. Like, nobody cared. They're just like, well, that's okay. Keep moving. Just keep walking. Like, they didn't feel for me, Grace.
They don't.
No.
Yeah, they still don't.
No.
Okay. That's why we're trying to get you friends, buddy.
But anyway, I ended up doing really well in that race, so I guess it kind of paid off. But I was kind of mad while I was there, and it was even aid station workers, like these people that are they're angels. They were just being mean to me, and
I don't feel
they're doing a good job.
But I think especially for the back of the pack, it is like it can be really hard sometimes, especially when things hurt, to figure out like, is this a hurt that is worth dropping out for or not? And making sure that your crew is ready for that, because you can think straight before the race, you can't think straight during the race. And so those are the different pieces of strategy that I like to put together. And I have so much more to say on this.
I know it's hard. I have so much more to say on every subject. We talk a lot, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely something we can hit back on again, kind of like you said, part 2 next time.
Yeah.
Even, PJ, I think he's still listening. He chimed in before the episode and said he'd like to hear each of our warm-up routines for different races. And that's big too. It's not something you show up at the start line with your vest full, just start running. A lot depending on the distance, your warm up is different and what we do. And I think we can get into that maybe next episode. Sorry, PJ, for not putting it in tonight. One more thing about PJ, and you name dropped a few times. I got a name drop on him. He just got second place in Buck Ridge Burn half marathon this past weekend. He is one of my athletes, and he got beat by the Lipsy. So I've gotten beat by Lipsy many times.
Yeah.
It's really like not even worth mentioning. Like he basically got first place because Lipsy is like ultra.
Matt doesn't count.
No, he really doesn't. Good job, PJ. But anyway, what else we got?
All right. So in the part 2, I want to talk about pacing strategy. I have a couple different tools that I use to put together a pace strategy. I think it's super awesome. And so stay tuned for part 2. Let me know what other questions you have about race prep, because that's probably a boring topic for some people.
No, I don't think it is. And I think we should make it a point to start it off next week.
Let's do it.
Finishing with the pacing stuff, I think is very important. And I think a lot of people don't talk about it as much as they probably should.
Yeah. And
that your layouts of your race prep is pretty phenomenal, in my opinion.
Yeah. And we talked about poop enough on this episode. So we got that going for us.
We squeezed it in there a little bit.
Squeezed it out.
You squeezed it out, yes. So, I mean, I think we want to talk about time management a little bit next week, possibly, but I don't know. We'll see. Time management in meaning like, how do you handle training for races, and what things get in the way, what things you can let get in the way, some things that are just excuses, in my opinion. So I think that'd be a fun conversation, almost as fun as aid stations.
We'll give everybody an excuse to tune in at 7:30 next week. What do you have going on this weekend?
Oh, what do I have this weekend? I am officially 2 weeks away from Boston. I hope next Monday, maybe we can talk about my Boston training a little bit. Talking about your race planning, and you had mentioned what clothing to wear. Mm-hmm. I'm still torn between whether I wear like cheetah print shorty shorts at Boston. Do I just keep it in moderation and wear your normal like just shorts and a tank top, or do I go like super crazy and I don't know, wear Speedos?
I have time to mail you the bathing suit.
The bathing suit would be a phenomenal one, because so many people would have so many questions and I don't have to answer them. I'm just going to run. No. But then we have the chafing issues.
There are chafing issues with that bathing suit. If you haven't seen pictures of it, you want to. You don't want to.
They're out. Google it or something. I'm pretty sure they're online.
I want to ask the crowd, and I hope that people chime in, add this to the chat, to the messages. What should Eric wear at Boston? He is running the Boston Marathon, and what should he wear?
Yeah, I am not really afraid to embarrass myself. Like, I'm going to go to this thing for the full experience. And if everybody's looking at me because I look really weird, well, then all the better, I don't care. So the bathing suit's a
Yeah.
pretty cool idea, honestly. I don't know if I would I don't know. I do have my limits.
Yeah. Okay. We'll figure out what those limits are. Put some ideas into the chat.
But yeah, running wise this weekend, I don't know. Easter Sunday's Easter. I'm going to probably get in one semi decent long run. I should be on that taper train right now. So I'll kind of be a good boy, I guess, and do something, but whatever. If the weather's nice, I'm going to do what I want to do. What about you, Grace?
I don't have anything set in stone. So I'm peeking around, see if there's any races that I can sweep for or something like that. I've been doing a lot of that lately, which has been super fun. And I've also been doing sections of the Horseshoe Trail. That's been a lot of fun. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I might go mountain biking with my husband. He's a fair weather rider. So if the weather's good, then we might be able to get out and hit the trails.
Nice. Well, hey, we're doing really good on that like 50-minute to 52-minute mark. So I think we might as well try to shoot with that. Everybody's saying the cheetah print for shorts, but I don't think these people know how high these things go. So that could be an issue. I think you've seen them. They are glorious. So I don't know. I think I might do it. Whatever. You only live once, right?
That's right.
All right, Grace. Great episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. See you next Monday. Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye.